Hello and welcome to Boxing Tonight, Mirror Fighting's preview show with me, Martin Domin, and my colleague, Rich Jones. Rich, no word of a lie, I woke up in a cold sweat at 5 a.m. this morning and was convinced that it was Sunday and that I'd missed the fight, and I didn't know what to do with myself. Then I realised it was actually Saturday and all was well with the world. However, I am still excited, and I haven't even mentioned the fight yet. I'm that excited. Vasyl Lomachenko, Teofimo Lopez. If you're not as excited as I am, I might have to look for a replacement for next weekend.
Yeah, it feels like we've finally got there. We've had some, we've said the last few weeks we've had a lot of tune-up fights and a lot of sort of fights building up to the big ones. It feels like this is the first real huge blockbuster fight we've had since the coronavirus pandemic and since lockdown and all that sort of stuff. And it's an unbelievable fight, isn't it? It's just a shame it's on at 3 a.m. our time, but going to have to stay up, I think. Looking forward to it later.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those. It's the age-old question for UK fight fans: Do we get up at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m., or do we stay up? I'm sure people will be pondering that for the rest of the day. As I said, it's definitely the biggest fight since Deontay Wilder took on Tyson Fury way back in February when the world was somewhat normal. And there are so many talking points, and we're going to run through some of them now. In Teofimo Lopez, we have the youth. In Vasyl Lomachenko, we have the experience. I don't want to call him old. He's still very early 30s, and I don't think we should be looking at his age, but certainly with his amateur background and his 3 world titles as a professional, he brings that experience to the ring. I know we will definitely see something, I'm sure, from Teofimo Lopez that we haven't seen before. He must have levels to go to. But I actually think that we might see something different from Lomachenko or something extra from him. Because he's had more than a year out of the ring now. He's had time to recover from a shoulder injury he had a hand injury, sorry. I actually think he might bring something different. I don't know, it just something in me just thinks, you know what, he's got something extra to give.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question, isn't it? Against Luke Campbell last time out, he maybe wasn't at his very, very best. Obviously, he got the win fairly comfortably in the end, but possibly wasn't the best Lomachenko we've seen. And like you say, he's had a lot of time out the ring now, as everyone has really. So it's going to be interesting to see just how much he's got left in the tank. And yeah, I agree with you. He's such an intelligent fighter. He's got so many sort of strings to his bow, and he's got a huge test. You saw him at the weigh-in yesterday, sort of jumping under the sort of barrier to get his face-to-face, and you can see that he's really, really up for this one. And I don't think there's any shortage of motivation there, and it's going to be fascinating to see what he can bring to counter that threat of the younger sort of up-and-comer Lopez. It's going to be interesting to see what Lomachenko's got to offer.
There's no doubt, Lomachenko said before, lightweight is not his natural division. I suspect if he wins or whatever happens tonight, he will probably move back down. So there's no doubt he will probably be the smaller man in the ring, and there's no doubt that Teofimo Lopez brings more power to this fight. But it's just too simple a sort of comparison for me or a discussion. For me, like when you read about other fighters who've been in with Lomachenko or people who have watched him fight, they always say the one thing, if you catch him, and he does start slowly sometimes, so if you catch him early and obviously don't put him away, you've kind of lost your chance, because he'll sort of input that into his formula in his brain, and then he'll come up with a response that means that if you try that same shot again, it just won't get through because he's already worked out a response. So yes, Lopez may well carry more power, but if he can't utilize that power in ways that Lomachenko is not used to, then it might not count for much.
Yeah, I completely agree with them. That's the thing that I think makes Lopez, gives him such a chance, is the fact that, granted, he's not been in with someone of Lomachenko's caliber before, but we've seen how ruthless he is when it comes to finishing opponents. His last fight, he finished it in style against Richard Comey, and he's got that power, but he also seems to have that sort of mean streak, that ability to sort of pick his shots when he does find an opening. So, like you say, if he does get Lomachenko hurt and does manage to catch him, then he really, really needs to be on the ball and sharp to sort of finish him off, because, as you say, Lomachenko just seems to be so good when it comes to these fights at just adjusting on the fly, like working out what's going on. His boxing IQ is just incredible. So yeah, Lopez, he's got a chance, but he's going to have to take every little victory he gets in there when it happens.
Yeah, I do think, of course, Lopez might bring something different. I'm not saying Lomachenko's seen everything, but you have to remember he did lose as a professional his second fight to Orlando Salido, who really put on the pressure and fouled an awful lot as well. It wasn't particularly legal, a lot of the stuff he did, but he got away with it and won the fight. So I'm not convinced Lomachenko will see anything he hasn't seen before. But then I guess that's the mystery of Lopez. He's still 23, still plenty of time on his side and may well develop. Whereas Lopez, he's going to encounter something he's never seen before. He's never seen in a ring before. And that's going to be fascinating to see how he deals with it.
Yeah, definitely. I think the one thing to say about Lopez as well is, fair play for taking this fight. I mean, they're obviously fighting behind, they're not going to be fans there. They're going to be behind closed doors. It's been, it's not what every fighter envisions as their sort of big coming out fight, their huge sort of breakthrough fight to be fighting, behind closed doors. And it's obviously a fight that, most people would probably expect Lomachenko to win. He'll be the favourite. But I think, fair play to Lopez. He's coming in there. He clearly believes he can win the fight. Seems confident. He's added so much to the build up, and I think he's shown, as long as he gets in the ring and puts in a good performance, it's kind of a win-win situation for him there. Because as long as he can do himself justice, he's if he goes in there and competes, he's shown he belongs on this big stage in terms of what he's brought to the build up. The build up's been fascinating to watch. Obviously, Lopez has sort of played the bad guy. He's been a lot of trash talk. Lomachenko has been his sort of usual ice cool self, hasn't really engaged in it too much, but. Lopez, he seems like someone who's destined for the big stage, and whether he wins this fight or not, as long as he puts in a good performance, we're going to be seeing him on these big bills, topping cards for a long time to come. I've seen a lot of comparisons with this and sort of the Mayweather-Canelo fight back in the day when Canelo was coming through, and obviously that was textbook Floyd Mayweather. Canelo couldn't get close to him, but obviously we've seen what Canelo's gone on to achieve since that. And I think whatever happens tonight, Teofimo Lopez is going to come out of there with so much more experience than he's had in his fights so far. And I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of him in the future, whatever he does against Lomachenko tonight.
Definitely. And you mentioned the trash talk there. It's quite an interesting facet to this as well, because Lomachenko's English is fine. I mean, it's not brilliant, but it's passable, and he understands and he can speak in it. But it does sort of bring into question just how much impact Lopez's trash talk is having. Like he's clearly chosen to go down this route and to make a point of trying to get under Lomachenko's skin. But you've got the language barrier, sort of, and then you've got the fact that I just think Lomachenko is such a calm kind of guy. Like you can see in the training he does, not his boxing training, but the sort of brain training. I can just imagine him nothing phasing him. And you have Lopez, who talks about dragging him into deep waters and things like that. It's like Lomachenko holds his breath underwater for 4 minutes. More sometimes. Like he's not getting dragged into any deep waters. And there's a question around whether Lomachenko's angry and whether he uses that anger in a constructive way and sort of really punishes Lopez, or whether it goes to his head. But I cannot see any sort of red mist descending. I think he'll just be as cool, controlled, calm as ever.
Yeah, I agree. I can't see there being any red mist. I think it has sort of got under his skin a little bit, but I think Lomachenko's character and what we've seen from him, he's the sort of person that from getting under his skin is just going to make him even more determined to prove a point, stick to the game plan. And I think if anything, it's going to make Lomachenko extra switched on for this fight. I think he's even more determined to win, to sort of silence Lopez. But I can't see it having any real, I can't see it, like you say, leading to Lomachenko deviating from the game plan, the red mist or anything like that. I think if anything, it's just going to motivate him a bit more and help him to bring out the best in himself later on, to be honest.
Yeah, it's going to be a fascinating fight. I've obviously gone over it in my head all week. I think I can't get away from Lomachenko winning. That's not to say that obviously Lopez has his fans, has his people predicting that he will win. I think I've settled on point, unanimous decision. I think possibly if Lopez gets to a point in sort of 8, 9, 10 where he knows he's heading for a defeat on the cards, if it gets that far and then just is reckless or really goes all in, then he may well get picked off and stopped. Lomachenko not always being able to stop people at this weight. Of course, Crawler, he did stop Linares almost with one hand really as well. He just makes fighters quit as well. So but I've settled on on a unanimous points decision. How are you feeling? How are you looking at it?
Yeah, there was a spell a few days ago where I'd got in my head that I thought Lopez could cause the upset, but I think the more I look over it, the more I sort of go back over some of Lomachenko's past fights, the more I think about it, I have to lean towards the points decision, the same as you. I think he's just going to be too clever. He's just going to be too experienced when it comes to sort of changing things as the fight goes on, making Lopez miss. And I think he's just going to make it really hard and really frustrating for Lopez. I think Lomachenko's still got plenty to offer. I think he'll probably win it on points, but I still think Lopez will have his moments. I think there's a good chance he comes out strong, starts strong. But I think as we get into the mid to later rounds, we'll see Lomachenko's experience and his technical ability really start to decide the fight, really.
And if you do want to watch the fight, unfortunately, Sky Sports and BT Sport decided not to pick it up. But Fight.tv have. It is £9.99. Head over to their website. You can purchase the fight. The undercard is free from 12:30 a.m. And then the encryption kicks in at 3 a.m. There's one fight. And then Lomachenko Lopez, £9.99. Fight.tv for fans in the UK. So that fight's in Las Vegas. Earlier in the evening, there's a card in the UK, not quite as glamorous, in Peterborough. A matchroom card headlined by Lewis Ritson and Miguel Vazquez. A card shorn of probably the best fight on the card, Hannah Rankin and Savannah Marshall. Was for the world title, but that fight is off. Peter Fury, Marshall's trainer, tested positive for COVID-19 in the week. I'm sure that'll be rescheduled for the weeks to come. Rich, and this fight should have happened in April in front of fans. Ritson, obviously one of the most popular fighters in the UK, so it'd be interesting for him to not have that backing. And obviously that's the same for any fighter right now, but he's a proper fans' favourite up in Newcastle.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously Lewis Ritson's one of those fighters that's built himself on that local fan base and the huge crowds and the atmosphere he generates up there. So it's going to be completely different for him, but I think it might actually be quite helpful for him as a fighter just to experience, going in there without any fans and, really focusing on the sort of the technical side of things, not getting dragged in, not getting sort of influenced by the atmosphere and the crowd. I think it'll be quite interesting for him. It'll be something new, obviously for everyone, but especially for Lewis Ritson. And it's another big fight for him. He can't afford to, come out flat given the lack of fans, because it's a huge fight, as they all have been since he had that surprising defeat against Patero when he challenged for the European title. So, it's going to be an interesting one. Big night for Lewis Ritson again, really.
Yeah, you mentioned that defeat, and Ritson has rebuilt well enough as expected. I don't particularly think Vazquez will be, it's not a huge step up. I don't think it'll be a huge challenge. Of course, he is a former world champion. And I remember 3 years ago when he took on Josh Taylor, that was considered a good step-up fight at that stage for Josh Taylor, but he was moved very quickly as a pro, and it probably was a good learning fight, if you like. He came through that fine, and since then, Vazquez, he lost to O'Hara Davies. I do feel like it's a solid fight for Ritson, but I'm not going to get carried away and call it anything that it's not.
Yeah, I agree. Ritson's got to be the favourite. I think you look at Vazquez, he's got a lot of miles on the clock. He's probably not the fighter he once was, but then again, he's got that experience, and I think it'll be a learning fight for Ritson. It'll be an interesting one. I'm sure he'll learn a lot from being in there with Vazquez, who's been around the block a bit. He's got a lot of experience. So Ritson's got to be the favourite, but as we've seen, you can't afford to take anything for granted in this game, and Ritson will need to be switched on throughout. But I think he probably is expected to get the win, and he'll be looking to do it in style, really.
Absolutely. That fight will be on Sky Sports Arena from 7:30, I believe, and then switch over to Sky Sports main event following the conclusion of Manchester City against Arsenal. Probably the weakest card that Matchroom will actually have between now and the end of the year. So many good cards coming up. Obviously, Usyk Chisora, White Povetkin 2, Anthony Joshua against Kubrat Pulev finally announced last night for December 12th. That is let's call it a warm-up event to really what the main event is tonight. Vasyl Lomachenko against Teofimo Lopez, possibly the best fight of the year. One of those fights that every boxing fan should be looking forward to. I will be back tomorrow morning to recap that fight and, of course, Ritson Vazquez. And then I'll be back again on Monday morning with George Groves and Declan Taylor for a more in-depth look. And then, of course, Rich, I think your excitement levels are adequate enough for you to have earned another appearance on Boxing Tonight next week. Please do join us each and every time. We're on YouTube, we're on Facebook.